And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you came back for more. Folks, that was a brilliant decision because we have more. Now, why do we have so much more? Because this is the podcast. It's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And you cracked the code. Our guest today is a podcaster and a good one at that. So I'm really looking forward to talking to this lady today about everything she has going on in her life, her cause, and so on. Folks, this is the place where we come together to raise each other up, and this is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. Really appreciate you being here. Let's get sailing and bring in our guest today. Please welcome the fundraising queen for non-human causes and the host of the Just Because podcast, Katherine Lacefield. Katherine, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. As you know, I just almost got mugged, so I'm doing better now than I was 15 minutes ago.
That's the first time anybody's come into the podcast and been like, "Hey, is everything look okay?" Because I just got mugged, and I'm just glad you're all right.
Almost mugged. Yeah, yeah. I'm fine. I'm fine. It was just like a typical tourist trap. And like, it was just like my husband was like, yeah, we're not standing for this. We walked away. It was super fine. But it was just like my heart beat a bit faster. And then we were like, I'm gonna be late for my podcast. Oh
There's
God.
there's
The
more
priorities.
right. There's more important things than worrying about
Is
being
there
late.
though?
Yeah,
Is there though?
mugging. Yeah, I think that qualifies. All right. So hey, I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you're with us today, Katherine. We got a lot to talk about, obviously today,
Yep.
about your podcast and your cause. Tell us a little bit about who is Katherine Lacefield. What are you about, and what brings you here?
So I loved I love the title that I give myself around fundraising queen for non-human philanthropy. So I started talking about non-human causes when ever since I could remember, I've been really defending animals and environmental causes. So I kind of put this into this non-human in the sense of the beneficiaries of a lot of these causes is not humans. It's usually actually almost against humans in many ways. But of course, this thought process has kind of evolved through the times where I realized that any cause does have a human aspect. You have to have volunteers, you have to have people donating, you have to have people running your nonprofit. So even if I use that term to kind of tweak interest and to get people to be curious about what I'm talking about, there is obviously a huge human impact. And that is where the majority of what my work is fundraising. It's building relationships with people who are going to be able to donate to support the causes that I'm very excited about, which is often animal shelters, conservation, wildlife, or climate change mitigation. And of course, I do care about children and humans as well, but kind of as a side note.
Gotcha. Well, now you've been an animal activist. I think I read since you were 15, since you were a kid.
Yeah, basically. So I was that annoying person that my mom was really disappointed when I said I want to be a vegetarian, and she was like, "Oh, that's great. You're going to go to school for that." I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "You're going to be a veterinarian." I'm like, "No, no, no." I said vegetarian, and she was like, "No, no, 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 no. Like, no, you're not going to do that." So that was that. That was me at 15. Sticking PETA stickers everywhere. I was a very into it, very young age, and it was actually the connection between when you're defending animals when you start digging into that, you also understand that there's a huge environmental impact to the way we're raising animals nowadays. And this is also, you can even consider from a domestic animal perspective, like the overconsumption of plastics and of now they're like wearing clothes too. So like there's a lot of environmental impact around the animal world as well. So those two often intersect. And that's where the kind of passion that I had for both the environment and animals kind of got together and got me to see, well, what can I do to help both of them? And well, all of these causes need help with fundraising, and most people suck at it. So that's where I decided to get better at it and help all the causes to better fundraise.
Nice. And you've been doing this pretty much your whole life. I mean, your whole adult life, right? As a career in terms of raising money and working for nonprofits and shelters and whatnot.
So ever since I was able to start working in a nonprofit, so as soon as I turned 18, I was able to work in an animal nonprofit. So I was working at a shelter, and then as time goes on, I realized that I just had a knack for fundraising. So even if that wasn't my job, when I was working at the reception, for example, and someone brought in a cat, had a great conversation, I was like, "Hey, would you like to make a donation to help support these kittens?" And she was like, "Sure." And she gave $250. Now back then, like $250 for just a random one-time donation was pretty significant. So I
Mhm.
realized what if everyone was better trained and just asking for donations, even if that's not their job? What if we started making fundraising fun again? That was kind of the whole cheesy thing that I like saying. And that just kind of led to me more and more getting involved in fundraising, ended up working in an animal rights organization. So even more crazy animal activists, and really diving into the fundraising rabbit hole. And yeah, 20, basically 15 years later, I'm still fundraising, but now as a consultant, so I can help more organizations instead of just one.
Nice. And so how long ago did you branch off on your own? That's interesting.
Yeah, it was about during COVID. I think a lot of people had these like illumination ideas of like not wanting to have a fixed job anymore. And I had actually lost my secondary source of income, which was I was a waitress as well as working in a philanthropy research lab. And my husband, who's a life coach, but also DJ, and we had a gym, we just lost everything, basically all of our ability to generate revenue. And I was kind of thinking, I've been in this game for a really long time. I know what I'm talking about. What if, well, I was actually in the pushing of my husband, if I'm being very honest, who said, why don't you try to be a consultant? And, the whole, why me? Like, I'm just a 30-year-old, like, who's going to trust me? Well, that kind of took a while to get over. But as I started talking about it, branching out, putting it out there, I started building a lot of confidence in it, getting invited to speak, getting invited on podcasts. And that kind of led into just generally having a really good, strong network. And now I have clients that just come to me instead of me having to chase them down.
That's fantastic. I mean, that is the definition of a successful consulting business is when they're calling you, right?
Exactly. And that's what you
That's
want.
wonderful.
But a lot of people think it just happens just like that, right? But no, it's years and lots of many hours of putting yourself out there and putting yourself into like people's heads in the sense of being in their ears so you can talk about podcasts, conferences. So you really want to get seen and heard by as many people as possible because the more people start recognizing your name, then they're more likely to trust you and to believe you when you do have an offer or when they are looking or thinking about I need help with fundraising. Who do I want them to think about? If they're an animal nonprofit, I want them to think about me. So I had to be really specific and niche in what my specialty and expertise was.
I was just going to ask you that too. I'm glad you said that. So you are a fundraising expert, but you specialize in fundraising for animal causes.
Yeah, because every cause, like if you're a health specialist, like if you're used to working with hospitals or with diseases, that's a very particular audience because it's going to be people that are either directly affected by the disease or who have family members affected by the disease. So your strategies are going to be kind of different. And when we're talking about hospitals, we're talking about endowments, we're talking about different levels of fundraising. But in the animal sector, you're talking with crazy cat ladies. Like that's your target audience, to be fully honest. And so it's a different communication strategy, it's a different fundraising strategy. And a lot of these organizations are more small mom and pop shops that started off not really knowing what the hell they're doing. And so it's just different levels and different strategies. So because I wanted to defend these organizations, I had to have the right marketing strategies to get to those people and to offer them a service that made sense to them. Like I am not at a point where I would want to work for a hospital. Like that's not, even if they would probably pay me a lot better. Like it's just not my target audience at all.
Nice. Okay. Now you mentioned earlier most people suck at fundraising, and
They do.
I'm sure that's true.
I
I probably do too.
don't think
So
so. Anyone that has personality and that has, some form of gumption that has the ability to talk to people and build relationships is usually good at fundraising. They just don't know it
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
yet.
So, like you said, people kind of suck at fundraising. Is one of the reasons that they are no good at it because they're going too wide and because they're not, niching down, like you're talking about? I mean, is that part of it,
No,
you think?
I mean, I think the base of it is that people are really uncomfortable asking other people for money.
Hmm,
We have this fear that like they're going to be insulted or something. I don't know what it is that they just we're very uncomfortable talking about money in general. Like even they say in relationships that's one of the number one causes of breaking up is that
right.
people have a hard time talking about money. And when you're asking someone and people are like, "Well, I'm asking them to give you money for nothing." And I'm like, "No, you're not. You're asking them to give you money to invest in a cause that they believe in and that will invest in a world that they want to see." And that's kind of the story that people need to hear more is that you're not giving them nothing in exchange. you're trying to improve the world. And a lot of these people, if you target them right, if you know who you're talking to, and if they care about animals or the environment or sick kids or whatever it may be, you're inviting them and you're giving them an opportunity to invest in that future, which you can't buy that anywhere else. You can't buy yourself into a better society, even if people think they can. So I think people just don't have the right perception around how to ask people. And specifically in the animal world, I'm going to say this, and I'm sorry for anyone that listens here that is an animal nonprofit leader. A lot of people in the animal world are really not good with people. They're animal people for a reason. They don't like people, or they don't get along well with people. And I'm not saying this for everyone. This is obviously a blanket statement. There's amazing people that are great at people like me. But generally, I have noticed a big difference in communication to people in the animal and even the environmental space. There's a lot of like us versus them, of like, we know what we're doing is great. Most of these people are bad people and they don't know what they're doing. So there's that's something that I'm trying to really break people to try to understand that we need to do this together. We can only solve these problems if we work together. So a lot of people just don't have that people person skill of building those relationships and taking the time to meet the person where they're at. They might not be a crazy vegan animal activist. That doesn't mean that they don't support your cause, but it's about meeting them where they are, having the conversations and taking the time. And most people don't do that.
You seem like an absolute natural at this in terms of what you're doing. I mean, especially just sort of flowing through you. And I know that you were into animal rights activism at
Yes.
a young age, but where did the ability to understand people and talk this talk and understand how to do fundraising, where'd that come from?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. As Maybelline would say, like maybe she was born with it. I don't know.
I mean, hey, if that's the answer, that's the answer.
No, I mean, there's a couple of things that play into it. I've always been a people person, and personal little small violin. I was a little chubby girl when I was growing up, and my last name was originally MacDonald. Imagine that, being a little chubby MacDonald. Like that was my growing up. So I had to have a really good personality because that was kind of what I felt people were going to be liking me for who I was, not for what I looked like. And I actually am very grateful for that experience because I love who I am today. I love my personality, my ability to connect with people. But from a training perspective of the fluidity, of the getting to understand people, of having conversations, I have to say that the best training was doing street canvassing. For anyone who knows, when you're walking down the street and you see that green person or the Red Cross person in the distance, and they're going to say, "Hey, do you have 2 minutes to talk about?" Yeah, that was me for 5 years. I did street canvassing for many, many years. And what this teaches you is, first of all, not to care if people insult you or they just walk away, or you get used to just people brushing you off and it doesn't affect you anymore. But what it also showed me is that sometimes the most surprising people will be the most generous, will be the most interesting conversations I've had. So I stopped judging people and just became very curious about, well, what motivates you? Like, what do you like about animals? And like, how can we find some common ground here and have a conversation? I've had people that we ended up like hugging. I have a girl, I think just the other day, we ended up connecting on Facebook after she joined. And I think she wrote to me, she's like, "Oh my God, I've been following you for years." Like, you'd be really surprised at how those people that are on the streets, like, next time, just say hi and just tell them that they're doing a great job because it's really, really difficult. But yeah, that I would say that was the best training school from a fundraising perspective on how to just be quick because people have the attention span of a goldfish right now.
Right.
Even worse now, this was like about 10 years ago, so even imagine now with like TikTok and all that jazz. But you had to capture their attention quickly and then convince them, not convert, we're not doing religious stuff here, convince them to give you their credit card or bank information and give a monthly donation. Like that was what we were doing. We were convincing and getting monthly gifts. We were also collecting one times, but that was kind of our goal. So to get people in that level of comfort, you have to be the type of person that is able to connect with people very quickly. So that there's things I learned. And the best thing I learned is being curious about the other person. People love talking about themselves. As this podcast shows, I'm just talking about myself. I love it. It's fun. but you have to do the same thing for the other person. And that's what also makes you a great podcast guest, a new podcast host, is when you're able to play both sides. So that can kind of lead into why I decided to launch the podcast as well.
Which is a great segue. Okay. Um, I love that because I mean you're talking about so many different aspects of yourself, right now, and
Mm-hmm.
things you've had to go through and that you've had to learn, and it can't be easy doing what you're doing. So I mean I appreciate the living daylights out of what it is you're doing and for your cause, and the fact that folks like you beat their head against the wall over and over and over to get that success. And on the outside, it looks like, oh well, that must be nice. You're just successful. They don't.
It
No
must
one
have been
sees
so
that.
easy for her. No,
Right. Nobody
I
sees that kind
wish.
of work.
No.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of people don't realize the nonprofit sector, like what it takes to succeed. And a lot of people start nonprofits without knowing what it's going to need. And so it's a big problem. And this is why one of my most popular posts on LinkedIn that I made was around why, if you want to change the world, you shouldn't start a nonprofit. And the whole reason was mostly to say there are so many nonprofits out there struggling. Like, why don't you partner with something that's already there that has some form of a base that you can work with and work together? And this is where ego comes a lot into play in a lot of nonprofits, where it becomes about the founders' desire to have their perspective because they have the right answers, they have the right way of doing things. And that is not how we're going to build a strong community. And I don't think that that's how we're going to solve a problem. You need to accept different types of people around the table. And this is also where fundraising comes to place. You need to find even those people that hate animals. You almost want to have an argument or something to have them be able to donate. And I had one, and I will share it with you because it was amazing. When I was on the street and people would say, I don't even like animals, I'm like, wonderful. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to stop puppy mills. You know what puppy mills are? Puppy mills is when people are breeding dogs continuously. You get annoyed with how much dogs are around. Well, look, if we shut
Nice.
these down, less animals are going to be born. And they were just looking at me like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, yep, I'm going to go that distance because you also care about having less animals because they annoy you. These solutions are also going to help people like you. So when you're able to try to get everyone at the table and know that they have a role and they can still support your organization, you can build a much stronger community. But a lot of nonprofit leaders, they don't think that way. They really do that like, we're the cool club, we care about the cause, and we're better because of it. And that's really not how you're going to build a community around your nonprofit. And that's not how you're going to get people to join.
Right. It's not how you're going to get people to support it with monetary
No.
donations either. I love that perspective shift. I mean, that's some
Mm-hmm.
next level sales mastery right there. I mean, I'm appreciating that right now. That was good.
Oh, and people like you have to understand fundraising does have a lot of sales in it. Like you have to apply. And so that's why I think a lot of the best fundraisers have good marketing background because they understand how people think. There's this whole classes and courses on donor psychology of what motivates people. And you have to understand that. I'm not saying doing some like Jedi mind tricks and like manipulating people. Like there's limits. Like you have to still be authentic and ethical in your fundraising strategies. Like you're not going to start saying like last chance to donate or like this dog's going to die. I hate when nonprofits use that. Even if it's true, it's manipulative and you're getting people to feel bad and to feel guilty. And then what's going to happen? They're never going to want to follow your page anymore because they're going to be feeling constantly guilt tripped. And then they're not going to want to support your work in the long term. So if you're looking to build sustainable long-term connections with your donors, you have to still be ethical. You can't use the same guilt tripping like marketing strategies that a lot of sales do,
Sure.
unfortunately.
Well, and again, I love what you're doing. You've mentioned a couple times your page and things like that, and we know we have a podcast, obviously. So
Yes.
it sounds like social media and the podcast are huge vehicles for you to continue moving forward with your independent business. Is that how you use those?
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. So I feel, and I also want to talk about this for anyone listening who is looking into starting a podcast or has thought about it. I really think people need to start understanding the different roles that podcasts can play, even if you're in the nonprofit sector. And I'm going to start by being a guest on podcasts before you actually do your own podcast. Because kind of like the nonprofit work of start being a volunteer in a nonprofit before you try to start your own
Hmm.
in the sense that podcast people don't seem to realize just how much work it can take and energy, especially in some context and like how you want to do it. It still takes a lot of energy. And it's the same thing with the nonprofits. Like it takes a lot of work to start and to make it successful. And that's where I'm going to make the differentiation. If you just want to have a podcast that's for fun, it's a passion project, and you don't care how many people, go ahead, be my guest. But if you actually have a goal of what you're trying to do, of reaching more people, so if you're a nonprofit, you're using it for building awareness, or you want to maybe even get some donors out of it, you have an objective, you need to do quality work. And the same thing goes with any form of communication. This is just another medium. So on social media, I see people, I'm like, no one's seeing your posts because they're garbage, because you're not paying attention to the storytelling that you're doing in it. You're just saying, we got 300 cats. It's an emergency. Okay, like what else? Like, how am I going to get involved? And so when people think about starting a project around communications like a podcast, they don't think of like what their vision is. So I'm going to walk you through, if you allow me to do so, of like my process of how I actually started the podcast to
Love
make
it.
it a success.
Absolutely.
So I did research. I didn't just wake up one morning and say, hey, why don't I just start a podcast? No, I've been a guest on a couple podcasts. I thought I was pretty fluid. I think I'm able to talk. I'm not uncomfortable. I thought it would be cool. And then I started doing research on, okay, so what is the best practices to starting a podcast? So I started with a survey with people that I wanted to reach. So I wanted them, I knew who my target audience was. It was nonprofit leaders. So I started with a little quick survey that was like, hey guys, like if you can let me know a bit about your podcast habits and like what you like hearing about on podcasts. And I did a little contest of like, I'll make a $50 donation to the nonprofit of your choice. One person is going to win a $50 donation. I got about 50 people to respond. They told me like how long they listen to podcasts for, how often they listen to podcasts for, do they like guests, do they like solo episodes? Like I really asked like what kind of podcasts do you listen to? Because like there's like my husband who listened to crazy Joe Rogan 2 hour long podcasts. Like these people were like, we don't got time for that. Like we're in the 30 to 60-minute max. So I was like, perfect. And then like the cadence of like how often they listen to it, all of this gave me information and insight on what my podcast should look like. But also they even told me like what topics they're looking for. They liked the guests and they liked this, so that helped me. These are my potential audience. I'm going to give them what they want. I'm not just going to focus on what I like doing. That's what a lot of people don't do. They focus too much on what they want and what they like, and it's like, that's great, but if your target audience doesn't like that, there's no point. No one's going to listen. So step one, do your research. Number two, prepare. So it took me a while to have some good guest interviews. And then it allowed me to like kind of practice in my first 6 episodes. I prepared 6 strong episodes before launching. And then my husband made me redo my intro. I swear to God, 50 times. I wanted to shoot him. Like I couldn't do it anymore, but it was good. I was glad I did it. So really taking the time to prepare your content. I did a little mini branding, nothing crazy. You don't have to spend 2 years working on a logo or your cover art. Like I did something really basic. It was actually just, I took a photo of me that I did in Mexico City. That was just a really cool background. It was this crazy house in Mexico City that we accidentally rented. Long story. That's another story. But the background was amazing. And we were like, you know what? Like it was literally like a couple days before the launch. I was like, just use that. We'll just use that. I like this. But we still took the time to plan the content really well. The intro, the outro, the music, all of that stuff took time. I would say between the day one where I like started thinking about it and the survey and when I launched, about a year. And in that year, I listened to podcasts about podcasts. I listened to YouTube videos about podcasts. I listened to other people that were podcasting in the similar branch as me of like, what did I like listening to? I really took the time to absorb before I launched into it. And then I prepared the launch. So I didn't just like give birth to it and like, here you go, goodbye. I did a contest and I launched it at a conference that was for animal welfare. So I was speaking at a conference on fundraising for animal welfare, and I launched a contest for the podcast launch where I said, if you follow the podcast on Spotify, if you subscribe to my email list, if you leave a review, you got extra points. That was like extra entries to win free consulting hours with me. let's just say it was a huge success. I also harassed all of my friends and family to do the same. I'm going to be very straightforward about it. I did.
All right.
But what did that do is that it created a huge momentum in the first week of the podcast, which allowed me to get to number 2 nonprofit podcasts in Canada within the first week of launching. Obviously, I did
Oh,
not sustain that, but if you're able to do that in that first week, you get that excitement. I built up a newsletter list. I built up like, I don't even know how many, like 100 something followers within just that little time. It creates this momentum and this excitement. And then everyone knew that I had a podcast. It wasn't a secret anymore. And then obviously it's about, keeping the cadence. I do it every 2 weeks because I don't have time for more. And just keeping the interest alive. And of course, it's about being open to changing. So I'm actually moving away from guests because my goal is to get more people to hire me. So what does that mean? I have to have more solo episodes where I show my expertise much more than my guests. So
right.
it's also about understanding that you're like anything, your podcast can evolve. So don't be too scared of like, yes, do your research, do your stuff, but also be open to evolving and changing with time, or else you're just going to become a podcast that is like, oh, it's been like the same for 6 years. Like maybe there should be some changes in there. So being open to change as well. So in a nutshell, that's how I launched my podcast.
And that's amazing. I can't disagree with anything you just said. I'm just sitting here going, yep, that's right. Yep, that's a good idea. Yep, that's right. I mean, and it's funny because you start with, identifying your target audience, right? And you would think that would be the first thing anybody would want to do. And yet it's the
I know.
last thing anybody gives any thought to because you're 100% right. All people do is go, what do I want to talk about?
Yes. And it's because, so for anyone listening who's in nonprofits, this is exactly the same mindset I think about when I'm doing fundraising. Who are my donors? What do they like? What messages do they care about dogs or cats? Are they crazy cat ladies? Let me share more cat stories. I get to know my audience. I do surveys. I figure out who's my donor profile, who's my donor's persona. And then I build the strategies based on who is more likely to give to my cause. Is it old people? Is it young people? Is it Gen Z on TikTok? Like figuring out who your people are will change the structure of your fundraising. So I just took the same strategy and applied it to the launch of my podcast. And I'm not saying I have hundreds of thousands of downloads, but I do get messages being like, someone that I didn't know existed tagged me in her LinkedIn post saying, I am so glad that these people like Katherine and Dana Snyder. Dana Snyder is one of the podcasts that I look up to, and I was on her podcast. Like she was like my golden chalice of like I want to be like her. I was put next to this person's name in a post. I was so excited, and she said like thanks to you, like I'm really learning free fundraising stuff on a regular basis, and I doubled my like fundraising goals for this month. Thank you so much. I was like, who are you? Where are you coming from? How did you how did you find my podcast? So obviously I sent her a message and it was amazing. So I do know that it's helping people, and that's kind of the whole point, right? Of making information more democratically available to everyone. So yeah, it's really exciting. I love it.
Sure.
As you can see, I'm very excited.
I can tell. I love your passion about all of this. It's fantastic.
Love it.
I also love the idea that you already got into it's okay to change.
Yeah.
It's okay to change the aim or the content or whatever it is if it isn't serving you any longer, right? So
Mhm.
you before you had guests on, and so it was more educational, it sounds like. And is that how it started in terms of what you wanted to put out there was educating people about what you were doing, or why bring the guests on at that point?
By the way, this is the husband who convinced me
I
to.
gathered that. I mean, yeah, he looks like an MMA guy, so I'm like, all right, well,
Because thanks to him, we didn't get mugged. Yay. So about the changes. So it was actually in the beginning, I thought it would be easier to do guests because I was like, how am I going to just talk alone, solo? Like, I don't know, it just felt weird. But also, I wanted to bring to light stories of interconnection. So the actual podcast, yes, I give practical advice, but the like umbrella theme is actually trying to get people to understand that all causes are connected to a certain degree. So you can't just care about animals. Like there's people behind that. There's the families of the animals. Why are they abandoning the animals? Maybe it's because there's a housing crisis, there's an economic crisis. Maybe they can't feed their family, so they can't afford their dog anymore. What if you just gave them food instead of having them abandon the dog? Maybe they would keep the dog and then both would be happy. So it's about thinking about how all of the causes that we think are separate if we started talking to each other, we would find common problems and probably solve those problems much faster. So that's kind of the umbrella theme. And then we dig into like, okay, and how does this help with fundraising? What's your fundraising strategy? Which is kind of, I assume, what your strategy is, where like I just talked a whole bunch about nonprofit stuff that has nothing to do with podcasting, but tied it into podcasting as well. So it's kind of the same thing of what I do. I talk about these overarching stories of interconnection, and then we like sprinkle in some fundraising tactics and dive into that. I also do fundraising specific episodes. And what I realized, and that's why I changed, is that the solo episodes were the ones that had the highest listening.
Yeah.
Even if like people loved those ones because they were shorter, they were concise, and they were specifically solving one of their problems.
Right. And that's the shift you're making now for the sake of the business too, because you're growing your own consulting business, and so now it shifts more into a marketing arm of your business. It sounds like.
A monetization, like
Right.
let's be honest, like I'm putting a lot of energy and effort into this. I would love to be able to monetize it in the best way from a podcasting coach that I met with. He's like, well, the best way to monetize it is to just get clients from it. And the best way to get clients from it is to showcase your expertise much more. But I'm going to make a little caveat here, because what I found was really helpful and useful by having guests is I could reach out to people that I saw as prospects
Hmm.
and offer them an opportunity to share their story on the podcast, then which built a relationship. And that actually helped with one. His name was Jim Karani. He does wildlife conservation. He's a lawyer who does wildlife conservation in Africa. And by inviting him on the podcast, we were able to have a conversation. And then that led into, a potential client opportunity. So I'm not completely going to stop doing guests, but just being more thoughtful and strategic about it. And the same thing can apply to anyone out there, where it doesn't mean you only have to do one, but just understand like what is your objective by doing one or the other or both.
Nice. I love everything you're saying right now. I hope everybody's hearing this loud and clear because you've clearly studied this and put a ton of thought into it, and it's refreshing to hear, to be honest. So I love it. I'm enjoying
I
it.
mean, it's like I feel like if you're gonna do something, like I'm the kind of person that, so I had this rule for a long time that went out the window a while ago, but before I got a tattoo, I had to think about it for a year. And if I still wanted to do it after a year, so I had to explore it from different angles, then I'd get it. Now I love tattoos and I just get them. But in the sense of, before you know what you're doing, before you embark into a new project, like now I know how to run a podcast. If I was to start another podcast with another theme, I don't think I would do as much research time, because I would be like, I know what I want to do.
Sure.
But before you start anything new, do the proper research so that you're not just making 300 million mistakes. You're going to make maybe just 1 million instead. So you're going to still make mistakes. This is not to say it's going to remove everything, but most people just don't think about these things before they get, they're like too impulsive. Like, oh, I'm going to start a new Instagram account. It's like, but what's the purpose of it? Like, what's your objective of having a TikTok with for your nonprofit or for your company? Like, is that where your target audience is? Like, I started a TikTok. I did the same mistake. Started TikTok, waste of time, complete waste of time. That's not where my audience is. They don't give it. They don't care. They're not there. So it was just for me for fun. It was an ego thing. Like, I want to have followers on TikTok, but that's not useful. So it's just sometimes taking a pause and doing the research can really just help you avoid wasting resources
Nice.
and time.
And it's obviously in promoting your podcast, you've put a lot of that thought and time and energy and effort into it. What have you found is the best way to promote your personal podcast, and obviously what hasn't worked? TikTok. I get that. So, but
TikTok is bad.
what has worked the best for you in terms of what you're trying to do?
So for my target audience, they are very much more on LinkedIn. A lot of the other consultants or nonprofit leaders or professionals are very much on LinkedIn. So I do posts where I really detail like the problem that the episode is kind of solving. And like, if you want to learn how to solve this problem, listen to this episode, do some little teasers, and then share it. Of course, I do have a newsletter list. I haven't gone to the level where I can track to like where all of the different downloads are coming from. So I don't have the exact data, but what has worked is definitely sharing it on LinkedIn much more than all the other social media platforms, and just being regular with it. So now I know I have a good audience that are checking in week after, well, every 2 weeks. So email, LinkedIn, and just talking about it regularly and having your guests share really increases listens 100%. That was also my
Nice.
fear about doing solo. I'm like, maybe it's gonna like not have as many people. I was wrong. I was wrong.
So at this point, have you found that podcast guesting is a good way of spreading the word about your podcast and or your business?
Of course. I actually remember when I was doing my millions of research, they were saying the best way to promote your podcast is to be on other podcasts because
Right.
that's what you're getting into people that like listening to podcasts, right? So you already, that's your target audience. So for anyone listening who wants to start a podcast, that's why I said in the beginning, like start getting onto podcasts because you're going to start building an audience. Like people will send me connection requests because they've seen me on other people's podcasts. You're widening your net, and you're also just going to get better and more comfortable at being on podcasts. And there's a couple platforms that you can use to do that. Like this, you don't have to just do it organically. So there's many resources out there that can really help you get onto more podcasts.
Nice. Is there anyone in particular you want to, throw out there to,
Well,
recommend to
where
anybody?
we met ourselves, like Podmatch is a great one that I
Sure.
use both as a host and as a guest. It just streamlines the whole process.
Yeah.
I find it's been really great. It's been a great investment. And it just makes it easier because I don't have the time to go and figure out what's the email that I need to find for the podcaster to send them a pitch and then wait. No, this one just like automatically matches you with people. So if
Right.
anyone's interested, like please put the link in the thing and share Podmatch.
100%. Absolutely. I have to ask, unfortunately, nowadays, about the dreaded AI thing.
Dun, dun,
Yeah, I
dun.
know, right? Is that something that you incorporate into your podcast or your world in any way, shape, or form?
So I heard a podcast the other day that I could swear, like I would bet quite a lot of money that it was entirely AI made. Like
Oh,
the text, the audio, it just sounded too perfect and flawless. And like even what they were saying, I was like, this is like borderline like propaganda. It was really strange. So I think the use of I believe, is can be really helpful in like streamlining certain processes. So I use AI as a tool to help me come up with, let's say, um, the show notes. I have a format. I've trained my AI to be like, okay, take the audio. So I have this platform called Cast Magic that's specifically for podcasts. I got it when it was like a one-time deal. It was amazing, super cheap. So I upload my audio and then it like gives me like all these automatic podcast specific prompts, like a newsletter and a LinkedIn post and like lessons learned and great quotes and all this jazz that I would need. So it just helps me just start the process because I'm a busy girl. Like I have a whole bunch of contracts I have to do. So it just kind of like helps streamline the process.
sure.
But what I never do is just copy paste things, except for the show notes. They've gotten really good. Um, Even for the LinkedIn posts, like I'll add myself to it. I'll add my personality. And I would say in the last 2 weeks, I've had many one-on-one calls with people that what I would say out of the blue booked a paid call with me. And you know what's come up the most? They're like, the reason why I actually open your newsletter versus most other ones is that I feel like you're the one talking to me. Like I can hear you, like I can hear your voice talking and that's exactly how I write. So I think AI can be helpful in streamlining the process, but don't lose your voice in it because then you're going to sound like everyone else. So,
Hmm.
like, yes, but with caution. And as long as you know what the hell you're talking about, like, don't use AI for things that you don't know what it is, or else it's not going to be true. You're not going to be able to catch those mistakes that it makes.
That's beautiful. I love that opinion of AI. So, very refreshing. I like it a lot. All right, at this point in the podcast, let me kind of fit in my corny question that I like to ask
Corny
everybody.
question.
Corny question. That's right. Total surprise for you. Here we go. What is it about doing your podcast that you love the most? And what is it about doing your podcast that you just absolutely hate the most?
Okay, I'll start with the happy one. I really like meeting people. I'm a people person. I learn so much from every single person that I have conversations with. And I think that makes me better at my job. So that's for me, it's like I get free education on a regular basis and new perspectives, new tools, new resources, new ways of thinking, new strategies. So for me, that's the conversations themselves. I love it. What I don't like, everything else. No, I don't like having to do. I don't do the editing. I would never touch that. No, thank you. That's my husband's job. Thank you. I don't like the the having to do all of the process. Like I would much rather hand off the marketing of it to someone else. Like if I could hand off like the preparing the social posts and the cover art and all the annoying stuff that I couldn't consider annoying, I would hand that off to someone else. I would still keep the social, like some of the like creating the texts for the like the posts and stuff, because I do think that that's very important to make it sound really authentic. But if I had to remove something, it'd be that, just because it takes so much time.
Nice. Okay. Great answers. Absolutely loved them. If people want to follow you, they want to hear more about you, they want to reach you, what's the best way? How do they get in touch with Katherine?
The best way is definitely, I'm a LinkedIn person. So please, Katherine Lacefield, find me on LinkedIn. If not, everything that you can, like all of my stuff is on my website. And it's very easy. It's just because dot consulting. It's very easy to find it. The podcast is there as well. So, just dash podcast, slash podcast, and you'll find it. If not, on all listening platforms, just because the just because podcast.
Nice, nice. Now we'll have all that stuff in the show notes. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. Um, as we kind of pull things together here and get to wrapping this up, you've given a ton of advice. I mean, like
Yeah.
every couple seconds, it's like another bomb of, hey, make sure you do this or don't do that, which is great because one of the reasons people listen to this is for the advice pieces. So
Hmm.
love that. I love you bringing that value, and thank you for that.
My
As you
pleasure.
kind of look back at what you've said already and maybe some things you haven't, what's your best piece of advice for podcasters who are not quite where you are? You can give multiple answers. You can double down on something you already said. I'm going to kind of give you the floor to answer that question. So go for it.
Number one, even if I made this whole structure of what you should do, also don't wait for it to be perfect. It'll never be perfect. Nothing is ever perfect. So yes, you can prepare, you can get ready, but if you wait for it to be perfect, you're never going to launch. And the best way for you to learn and to improve is by trying. So yes, do the research, but also in French would say, "Enfarge-toi pas dans les fleurs du tapis." Like don't trip on the flowers in the carpet, which makes absolutely no sense in English. But don't get lost in the details is basically what it's saying. So that would be my number one advice of the best way to learn is by trying. And I think it was even, what's that super famous YouTuber who said like you have to make 100 YouTube videos before you make a good one. I don't think that's necessarily true for podcasts. I don't think you need to do 100 episodes. I'm at 30. I think they're pretty good. But I think that it is through practice, and being a guest can actually be a really great way of getting that started faster. So that would be my like number one advice. Don't go too crazy. Don't try to be a perfectionist and get on. Well, number two would be go on other people's podcasts to get used to it and to see, do you even like this? Like, do you even like being on guest, like having guests, being on podcasts? So that would be my number two, because I feel like I've given us so much advice already. That I think that was the one I would like to like hone in on this time.
I love it. You've brought a ton of value today,
Yeah.
and I can't thank you enough for that because people just eat that up and they love it. And you're a fantastic guest. So you obviously care about what you're doing too.
I
Um,
do.
Yeah, that's Catherine. Good luck with everything. Good luck with
Thank
your
you.
consulting business, your advocacy, everything else. Yeah, I love where your heart is, and I love what you're doing. And I can't wait to see where you go with the podcast too. I'll keep my eye on you and listen to episodes. So we'll see. We'll be
We'll
checking
stalk
it.
each other. We'll
All
stalk
right,
each other. It's okay.
sounds
Let's do
good.
it.
I like that. All right, folks. The fundraising queen for non-human causes and the host of Just Because podcast, Katherine Lacefield. Katherine, thank you so much for everything you brought
My
today. Really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Folks, that's been another fantastic episode of the Podcaster Nation. Why was it so fantastic? Because this is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. Folks, as we proved again today, and I mean in great length with all the advice you got, this is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So keep sailing.